Good evening. My name is Kieran Testard, and I am the chair of the Standing Committee on Public Accounts. And tonight we are here to review the Auditor General's 2025 report of housing in the Northwest Territories, and also receive a public briefing with Housing Northwest Territories officials. And of course, the Office of the Auditor General officials as well. I'd like to remind all members and everyone watching that this committee is responsible for reviewing the Auditor General's performance audits of the GNWT's entities and programs, and at this meeting, the Auditor General's financial audits of the GNWT public accounts. Our role as a committee is to review in a nonpartisan manner how public funds are spent and how government programs are administered. We are here to assess the impacts of the government's policies, not their political merits. And today we are joined by Pauline Pierre, Senior Assistant Auditor General, Joanne Schwartz, Principal at the Office of the Auditor General, Dr. Aaron Kelly, President and CEO, Housing NWT, and staff from Housing NWT. I see Jim Martin is here. He's Vice President of Finance and Infrastructure Services, and Vanessa Stretch, Vice President, Programs and District Operations, and perhaps others we will hear from as the night goes on. This meeting is being live streamed, so please direct all questions through me as the chair. Your mic will come on. You do not need to operate it. Do not touch the buttons. We have very competent technical staff who will do that for you. I'll now ask members to introduce themselves. We'll start with Minister McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jay McDonald, I'm the MLA for Det'anchogh, Minister of Environment and Climate Change, Minister of Justice, and the Government House Leader.
Good evening, welcome. My name is Danny McNeely. I'm the MLA for the Sahtu region.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening, everyone. My name is Denny Rogers. I'm the MLA for Inuvik-Boot Lake.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Cheryl Yakalai. I'm the member for the Det'anchogh.
Thank you. And I think I already mentioned, but I'm Kieran Testard, member for Range Lake and chair of the committee. So we'll now turn to the Auditor General's office for opening remarks. Madame Pierre.
Said not judged. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening. I'm pleased to be here to discuss the Auditor General's report on public housing and homeownership programs in the Northwest Territories. The report was tabled in October 28, 2025. Housing Northwest Territories, or Housing NWT, is the territorial corporation responsible for funding, supporting, and overseeing independent local housing organizations in their delivery of the public housing program. It is also responsible for delivering programs that support homeownership in 33 communities. Overall, we found that Housing NWT did not provide residents most in need with equitable access to housing and housing supports. Although Housing NWT had developed a rating system based on criteria like affordability and time on wait list to guide local housing organizations in allocating public housing units, we found that it did limited monitoring of how those criteria were applied. As a result, Housing NWT did not know whether local housing organizations prioritized people with the greatest need when they allocated units. As of March 2025, people had been on wait list for public housing across the territory for an average of about 2 years. Once applicants are allocated housing, it is important to ensure that the units they move into are safe and well-maintained. Tracking the condition of public housing units and carrying out regular maintenance are essential activities to document the state of the units, to plan repairs, allocate resources efficiently, and prevent costly deterioration. We found that Housing NWT's monitoring of the condition of public housing units and associated maintenance work was limited. It did not monitor whether condition ratings of public housing units were completed every 2 years as required. We found that, on average, unit condition ratings were conducted more than 2 years apart, with the largest gap being slightly over 5 years. Housing NWT also did not complete the required annual assessment of local housing organizations' performance related to maintenance activities. Poorly maintained units can lead to health risks, reduce quality of life, and potentially increase inequalities. Through its 8 home ownership programs, Housing NWT helps residents most in need buy or rent homes and make repairs. The audit found that the corporation did not consistently apply key eligibility criteria, such as age and income, to ensure equitable access to the homeownership programs. These criteria are important to ensure funding is distributed equitably, for example, to those aged 60 years and over when a program is meant to support seniors. Housing NWT was also not monitoring the outcomes of its homeownership programs. As a result, it could not ensure that funds were allocated to meet the objective of equitable access to homeownership supports. Many of the issues raised in this audit are not new. They were identified in previous audits in 2008 and 2012, and they remain unresolved. Housing is more than just shelter. It's the foundation for health, economic stability, and quality of life. The government of Northwest Territories must act to deliver equitable access to housing and housing support for residents in the territory. Mr. Chair, this concludes my opening statement, and we will be pleased to answer any questions the committee may have. Merci, thank you.
Thank you, Madame Pierre, and for your office's work on this important audit and subject matter that's near and dear to the hearts of our constituents. I'll now turn to Dr. Kelly. You can provide your presentation, and afterwards, the committee will ask questions of both the Auditor General's Office and Housing NWT. Dr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good evening. The chair has already introduced some of the folks that are here. I'll just complete those that are not sitting at the table. We have Michael Saturnino, the Associate Deputy Minister for Housing, Sustainability and Partnerships. We have Scott Reed, the Director of Infrastructure Services, Ella Newhook, the Director of Housing Programs, and Trish McFall, the Director of Policy and Planning. For this evening's presentation, I will first provide the scope of the audit, and then I will briefly go through the audit findings made by the Auditor General. And finally, I will cover the Auditor General's recommendations and outline the actions that Housing NWT is taking to address each recommendation. This audit examined activities undertaken by Housing NWT over a period of 2 fiscal years, from 2023 to 24 and to 2024 to 2025. The objective of the audit was to determine whether Housing NWT provides Northwest Territories residents most in need with equitable access to housing and housing supports through its public housing and home ownership programs. The audit scope focused on public housing and home ownership programs, and the audit excluded market housing and help programs, as well as homelessness programming and local housing organization operations. So you've already heard some of the performance audit findings, so I'll just hone in on some of the ones that we'll be speaking about. The audit concluded that Housing NWT conducted inadequate monitoring of the LHOs, specifically in the areas of social housing allocation and social housing unit condition ratings and associated maintenance activities. The audit also found that Housing NWT did not consistently apply eligibility criteria for homeownership repair programs. It is important to note that of the 51 files rigorously audited by the OAG, 78% met the audit requirements for equitable access to homeownership repair programs. We agree that more rigor needs to be applied to our application process. However, we also note that minimal process changes are required to bring this part of the audit to acceptable standards, which is good news. The Auditor General also identified the need for Housing NWT to regularly monitor the outcome of its programs, and this need was first identified by the Auditor General in their 2008 audit. The Auditor General highlighted that Housing NWT had begun to deliver on the GNWT's commitment to completing a territorial housing needs assessment, which was released publicly today. The final report of this assessment was shared with Standing Committee last month and was released, as I mentioned, publicly earlier today. As the Auditor General noted, this finding matters because effective management of the NWT social housing inventory is essential for Housing NWT to identify the adequacy of our social housing units, plan repairs, allocate resources efficiently, and prevent costly deterioration. The Auditor General also identified that we improved our capital planning processes in 2025-26 by incorporating data such as age and building condition ratings as clear rationale for the replacement of public housing units. As committee will likely recall, the Auditor General had 6 recommendations for Housing NWT in their report, and we accepted all of those recommendations, and we began to take immediate steps to strengthen oversight, improve maintenance activities, and modernize policies to ensure fairness and transparency. I'll go through the recommendations and outline the actions that we are taking to address them in the final section of my presentation. So, on slide 8, recommendations. So Housing NWT should systematically monitor LHOs to ensure that requirements for public housing unit allocation are met and corrective actions are taken if it identifies that allocations are not made in accordance with its policies, procedures, and guidance. In response to the recommendation on the monitoring of public housing allocations, Housing NWT is conducting an external review to examine the structure and governance of LHOs, assess current monitoring practices, and identify opportunities to improve allocation practices. To do this, we will look at best practices from other jurisdictions and conduct engagement within Housing NWT and with LHOs to explore options for enhancement. Housing NWT has already completed an interjurisdictional scan and plans to issue an RFP for an external reviewer in the spring of 2026. We will continue to support the capacity building of LHOs by documenting and amending policies, procedures, and guidance to reflect current practices. Housing NWT is actively reviewing and updating the LHO administration manual, with work expected to be completed in the spring of 2026. On slide 9, we are also going to conduct regular assessments of allocation practices. Housing NWT is in the initial stages of scoping a framework for monitoring allocation practices. Additional collaboration within Housing NWT and with LHOs has begun to streamline monitoring and incorporate best practices. We have initiated discussions with LHO managers to identify areas for monitoring and incorporating best practices with an aim to develop a comprehensive monitoring framework. We are also developing a systematic approach to allocations and corrective actions with clear guidance to Housing NWT staff and LHOs. Housing NWT will review current approaches and develop guidelines once consultations with LHO managers and a framework have been completed. As noted in the report, these actions will be implemented in line with available resources. We will support this work by strengthening our internal systems and tools to improve transparency, accountability, and compliance. At the same time, these actions will advance reconciliation by taking a person-centered approach consistent with Housing NWT's mandate. Slide 10. For the recommendation that Housing should review and update its policies, procedures, and guidance to support the equitable allocation of public housing carried out by the LHO, we are working closely with LHOs and subject matter experts to review current allocation practices and identify where there may be gaps or additional guidance needed. We've initiated these discussions with LHO managers. We are also reviewing and updating our policies, procedures, and guidance related to the point rating system and tenant transfers to promote greater fairness, transparency, and consistency. This work will focus on ensuring our policies are person-centered and culturally appropriate, and Housing NWT is currently developing a framework for a tenant transfer process to be incorporated into the territorial housing system. We are also introducing a new tenant transfer policy that incorporates transfer requests into the point rating scale to support the fair and equitable allocation of public housing units. This policy will provide clear and consistent guidance to local housing organizations when assessing both new applicants and existing tenants seeking transfers. Housing NWT is consulting with LHO managers in the development of the policy and associated procedures, and we expect this work to be completed in late 2026. To provide clear direction to LHOs, we're revising and updating the LHO Tenant Relations Manual to better reflect best practices. An updated draft is expected to be completed in the spring of 2026. And we're also supporting LHO capacity building by documenting and updating policies, procedures, and guidelines to reflect the one-on-one training and oversight currently provided by district staff. We will also ensure that changes to policies and procedures are communicated clearly and supported with training resources. Housing NWT hosts an in-person LHO managers meeting annually, and we have initiated monthly online LHO and district check-in meetings to discuss changes to policies and procedures, and topics are being documented. On slide 12. For the recommendation that Housing NWT should monitor and document its monitoring of unit condition ratings and maintenance carried out by LHOs, we are assessing LHO compliance with the required maintenance activities annually and enforcing the requirement for the LHOs, this is a recommendation as well, to submit quarterly reports on maintenance activities. On slide 13. So what we are doing is supported by a working group comprised of LHO and Housing NWT staff, we modernized our maintenance management system in October of 2025. So Housing NWT provided initial training to LHOs at that time and continues to provide follow-up and ongoing assistance and support. To support more timely and accurate reporting on performance outcomes, Housing NWT is expanding the use of online reporting tools, and we're piloting digital devices. So in 2024-25, we developed an online preventative maintenance report to track progress of our PMs, and we will be releasing additional online reporting tools starting in the spring of 2026. In 26-27, we will also be piloting mobile devices for use by LHO staff to action and track work orders in Yellowknife and Hay River, with the aim to deploy additional devices to other regions following the pilot. We will complete the required unit condition rating verifications for each LHO, and in 26-27, pilot third-party condition assessments of some public housing assets in 3 different communities. Specifically, over the next 2 years, Housing will complete at least 3 unit condition rating verifications for each LHO, which is a minimum of 72 verifications as per established process. Beginning in 26-27, we plan to track UCR verifications using our automated maintenance management system. These efforts will augment Housing NWT's maintenance program, ensuring timely, effective maintenance, and demonstrate that units are adequately maintained. On slide 14, we will also complete a comprehensive review of the community housing services agreements through the collaborative process that began in 24-25. And we're currently completing an internal review of the agreements, with meetings being scheduled with LHOs to collect collaborative feedback and agree on achievable and quantifiable performance measures. This work is expected to be completed in late 2026. Formally document quarterly maintenance activity reporting is something that we're working on through a structured process that proactively identifies capacity needs and training investments so that we can better support LHOs and improve maintenance outcomes. As previously noted, we have completed the rollout of the user-friendly online reporting dashboard for preventative maintenance for use by LHOs and Housing NWT staff. We will be releasing additional online dashboard reporting tools in the spring of 2026, and monthly progress reports on preventative and demand maintenance activities from our maintenance management system continue to be provided to directors for follow-up with LHOs. We will also develop and implement joint compliance reviews of maintenance outcomes with LHOs to ensure expected standards are being met, identify gaps, and determine where additional support is required. This will include an annual results report that summarizes performance, highlights areas for improvement, and supports continuous improvement efforts. Housing NWT hosted an LHO maintenance and technical workshop in October of 2025, where folks reviewed the requirements to complete, track, and report on maintenance activities. And we will continue to engage with LHOs to identify areas for continuous improvement and where additional support from Housing NWT could be provided. We are also developing a program evaluation review of the maintenance management program, which will result in the creation of key performance measures. These efforts will ensure that housing units are adequately maintained and that LHOs continue to be supported in meeting reporting requirements. Slide 15 highlights the recommendation that Housing NWT should ensure procedures and guidance on verifying and documenting homeownership program eligibility and prioritization to staff is comprehensive and rigorously followed. On slide 16, the following actions are being taken to address this recommendation. Housing NWT is updating and expanding guidance on verifying and documenting homeownership program eligibility and prioritization, and that will be done by April 2027. This will be supported by streamlined documentation tools and targeted training resources to improve clarity and ensure alignment with program objectives. The modernization of this initiative will also foster meaningful, culturally appropriate collaboration with clients through a person-centered approach. Housing NWT has a clear understanding of the changes required to address the minor documentation issues that were raised, and we will conduct a thorough review of our documentation processes for the homeownership repair programs. We are also exploring additional resources to strengthen our capacity for routine file audits and monitoring. Providing added support and training for staff will help ensure that eligibility and prioritization criteria are applied consistently and fairly across all regions. These initiatives will enable Housing NWT to identify areas for added support and guidance to ensure that homeownership programs are meeting the needs of residents effectively and equitably. On slide 17, the recommendation from the OAG around comprehensively monitoring the performance of the programs and outcomes achieved for all of our homeownership programs. We are taking the following actions to address the recommendation. We're working to embed a culture of evidence-based decision-making and continuous improvement across all of our homeownership programs. On slide 18, we're developing formal program evaluation processes for homeownership programs. So a new program evaluation position was created in 24-25 at Housing NWT, and it has recently been filled. This demonstrates our broader commitment to building internal capacity for program evaluation in line with our mandate. And a program evaluation framework was developed for the emergency repair program in 24-25, with the evaluation of the program planned to be completed by October of 2027. We will also develop a program evaluation design for one additional homeownership program, and that will build on the evaluation design that's already underway for our market housing and public housing maintenance programs. Each framework will include performance indicators tied to short and long-term outcomes, allowing us to assess program effectiveness, inform future planning, and ensure a flexible, person-centered approach. We are currently reviewing opportunities for Indigenous governments or non-governmental organizations to have roles in the homeownership repair programs. And collectively, these efforts position Housing NWT to respond proactively to housing needs, improve service delivery, and ensure that homeownership programs are delivering meaningful outcomes for residents. Thank you so much for your time. We're happy to answer any questions that committee may have.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. So this committee doesn't like to see recommendations that are, 17 years old, but we do like to see is very clear and tangible actions to respond to recommendations. So we do thank you for that and the promptness that you were able to communicate what steps you were going to take. So we will now get into questions. First to Madame Pierre, how many hours did it take to complete your audit?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe we've totaled about 7,000 hours.
Thank you. How did you determine the scope of the audit as well. We went over the presentation indicated where the scope was, but why did you choose to, the programs you chose to evaluate? And I'm here.
So typically, we focus on various factors to decide where to land on the selection of the topic first, and then when we conduct the audit, also at the scoping phase to see where it would be best to focus. In the case of this audit, we certainly considered significant findings from past audits, wanted to make sure that there had been progress and that the issues that were raised were somehow resolved. So that was one of the key criteria. But we also looked at the various programs and considered that both the public housing plus the homeownership programs together, they represent more than half of the expenditures of the corporation. So this was the main drivers for the focus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We note that, the committee notes that the audit did not audit LHOs specifically, and that information on LHOs was provided by the corporation, as LHOs are kind of the key mechanism to provide housing services in the Northwest Territories. Can you share the rationale for why local housing organizations weren't part of the scope of your review? Madam Chair.
So the Office of the Auditor General is the auditor for the territory, for the government. Considering that LHOs are independent parties who come into an agreement with the government, we do not audit these third parties. Our responsibility is really to look at the role of the government in this file, in these programs, and have they met their commitments, and to what extent the programs are effective. So that's the rationale.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You mentioned that the scope of this audit was one of the rationales was to look at past recommendations and how they were followed up on. Can you comment on some of the previous audits that the Auditor General has made, or recommendations from previous audits, and what has been done on the topic of housing and progress you're seeing from the corporation and local housing organizations over time? Madam Chair.
Mr. Chair, this was not an exact audit as the past previous audit, although we looked at, again, some of the areas where we had seen issues in the past. I want to say that although we have raised issues that we considered should have been resolved, the response from the corporation is very detailed this time around. We see that there are concrete actions that are measurable with a set timeline. So that's the major difference from what we have seen in the past.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll now turn to Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Madam Chair, the GNWT has proposed a number of actions to meet the intent of the OAG's recommendations to systematically monitor local housing organizations to ensure that requirements for public housing unit allocation are met and corrective actions are taken. If it identifies that allocations are not made in accordance with its policies, procedures, and guidance. Does the OAG feel that the GNWT's response will adequately respond to the recommendations?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Chair, as I said earlier, we saw that the responses were very clear with concrete actions that can be measurable. This committee can certainly ask to see progress and not wait until the end of the deadline, the timelines. We do feel that there is focus on resolving some of the root issues that were highlighted in the audit. So we are satisfied with the responses.
Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are there additional actions that the OAG would recommend that the GNWT take?
Madam Chair.
I think the corporation has covered everything that we have highlighted in the recommendations. So again, we are satisfied with the responses.
Thank you, Madam Pierre. Mr. Rogers?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, my questions are again for Madam Pierre of the OAG, and it's around the inconsistent monitoring of the public housing units, now whether they were appropriately allocated. In your report, you used an example for your finding that there were gaps in the guidance that Housing Northwest Territories provided to local organizations to support equitable public housing allocation. These examples that the point rating system was updated to allow for applicants with a disability to be awarded additional points. But the guidance provided to local housing organizations did not clarify whether the disability must be impacted negatively by the applicant's living conditions in order to be awarded these additional points. Can the OAG share some more information regarding the gaps in that guidance and any other gaps that you observed during the audit period, including any other examples?
Mr. Chair, if you allow, I will ask my colleague, Ms. Schwartz.
Ms. Schwartz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the question. So we did find, as the member mentioned, that there were gaps in the guidance that HNWT had provided to the local housing organizations to support equitable public housing allocation. In addition to the example about disability that you mentioned, we also had an observation that there was no guidance on how to allocate units when public housing tenants wanted to do a transfer. So that is something else that we mentioned in the report as a gap. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Rogers, anything further?
I don't think.
Okay. Ms. Yakalai?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is for the NWT Housing. The audit recommended a lot of change, and based on the minister's statement last week, it sounds like HNWT is making progress. How is the corporation working through change management with the LHOs and internally? Are there areas that are proving challenging or any particular lesson learned that can be highlighted for the committee?
Thank you, Ms. Yakalai. Dr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the lessons that we learned is that we had put a real focus on improving relationships with LHOs and developing the relationship piece. And sometimes it seems it was at the expense of documentation. And many of the places where it says inadequate or ad hoc monitoring are because there were conversations that were going on, but we weren't documenting those properly. So, I think another thing I would note is that in past audits, when speaking to folks at Housing NWT, there were a group of people that got together and decided this is how we're going to address it, but we weren't talking to the people that are doing the work. So we weren't engaging with some of the district offices and the LHOs who are the ones that are on the ground. And as you heard in the presentation, this time around, we're working from a bottom-up approach. We're saying we're going to do this. How are we going to do this, LHOs? What will work for you? What will work for district staff so that we can make sure that it works this time? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Ms. Yakalai?
Committee notes that HNWT has agreed with each recommendation and committed to making changes to how housing programs and governance is delivered. Are the October 2027 dates continuing to be feasible for delivery?
Dr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're doing the best that we can. We have some capacity challenges. We're looking internally to see how we can be as effective and efficient as possible. There are also capacity challenges within the LHOs. So we're working hard to try to find ways to use the limited resources that we have to address these and meet our timelines that we put in the report. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Ms. Yakalai?
How will standing committee and the public be kept apprised of progress?
Dr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we have a list of actions. You heard our most recent reporting, which was in the House. The minister provided an update of where we're at. We also are trying to get things out, even using tools like Facebook to show how we're making changes and making progress, because we think that will help people to develop further trust in Housing NWT and the changes that we're making. But we're definitely keeping an action tracker of where we're at with all of the items that were mentioned in the presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Yakalaya?
How is the GNWT supporting Housing Northwest NWT in making these changes? Can HNWT speak to areas where support is required and what might this look like?
Dr.
Thank
Kelly?
you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I spoke about some of the technical folks coming together for the meetings, and we also have program folks that are coming together for meetings from the LHOs and the district offices to talk about how we're going to make these changes. I do want to note that in some cases, what the auditor is saying is that we're not following guidance that we have at Housing NWT. So what we've talked to people about is, do we need to change this guidance? Like, maybe this isn't the best way to get to the end goal. So in some cases, we may be changing the guidance. There were a lot of documents that needed to be updated, and we're working to get those updated as well. But we're working with the folks that actually use the guidance to make sure that it's relevant and it makes sense. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Just to put a finer point to Ms. Yakalaya's question, it was, what is the I guess, greater government doing to support housing, the corporation in this sense? So
means.
if you, no, that's fine. If you could just speak to like how, I guess the GNWT is supporting the corporation, given your not arm's length role, but your unique role within the departments. Dr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I believe the broader GNWT is fully supportive of the ways that we've documented that we're going to address these challenges. And we've been encouraged to deal with the issues, particularly those that have been longstanding. And we have plans in place to do that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Yakalaya.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The housing needs assessment was released today. We noted that the needs assessment is reporting that there are limited pathways to home ownership in most communities. Although increasingly Indigenous governments are developing programs to support members in this area, can committee hear some examples of what programs Indigenous governments are developing to address this need?
Dr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's a bit challenging to speak for Indigenous governments, but there's a number of different ways that we're aware of. Off the top of my head, some of the Indigenous governments are doing repair programs for those that already own their homes so that they can become at a standard that's safe for folks to live in. Others are doing programs, for example, where they enter into a loan, but it's forgivable after a certain amount of time so that they own their homes. It runs the full gamut. For us, we're doing reviews of our home ownership programs because we've noted that we think that there could be better ways. So we're looking at how others are doing it, including Indigenous governments, to see if there are changes that we should be making for our home ownership programs. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Yakalaya.
Can HNWT speak to the engagement with Indigenous governments to get their input on housing and home ownership in general? And in the development of the territorial housing needs assessment, what have they shared with HNWT about their housing needs, and how has this engagement informed the results of the assessment and next steps?
Dr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So to start with, Housing NWT has a housing forum, which is co-chaired with an Indigenous government, and all of the Indigenous governments can participate. There's lots of information sharing that is done there and input that is gathered through that process. We also have memorandums of agreement or understanding directly with Indigenous governments on housing needs, where we sit at the table and work together on challenges related to housing with Indigenous governments. With respect to the territorial housing needs assessment, we were able to gather qualitative data from 20 communities through a contract that we had on the qualitative data side of the territorial housing needs assessment. There were some communities, unfortunately, we weren't able to, because of fires and other things that happened during the time of engagement, to work together with them to gain information, but we have ongoing relationships and we will continue that work. All of the qualitative data is documented in the territorial housing needs assessment. There's appendices in the back of it that are community by community, and they speak to that specific information. There's probably too much to speak to today that's in there, but I think none of the information in that territorial housing needs assessment is a surprise, in the sense that we know that we don't have enough housing in the Northwest Territories in all of our communities. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Ms. Yakalaya?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The three-year housing plan has provided HNWT with $50 million per year for the lifetime of the 20th Assembly. With the completion of the needs assessment, can HNWT speak to what long-term funding will be required?
Dr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are greatly appreciative of the $50 million a year for the next 3 years. And as we were speaking about yesterday in Committee of the Whole, there's still a very large infrastructure deficit that is left after these 3 years with that funding. Our hope is that we will be putting in an application to build Canada Homes with the federal government, where we will access more funding over the longer term so that we can drive down that infrastructure deficit. We have close to 495 homes that are at 50 years or over and need replacement for public housing, and that's a lot of housing required on top of what you read in the territorial housing needs assessment today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Yakalaya?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The minister stated today, noted that there will be a high need for federal funding to close the gaps. Are HNWT staff able to speak to any funding or agreements with the federal government that would begin to meet this need?
Dr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as I mentioned, Build Canada Homes is the main federal programming that we're looking at, and we are finalizing our proposal to be put in. And we're also speaking with Indigenous governments about their interest in proposals and trying to make sure that they complement each other. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Yakalaya?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What are the current identified capacity pressures and service gaps for the Northwest Territories rental office and local housing organizations that could be potentially addressed through an operational review of the rental office system? Thank you.
Dr. Kelly, given that you're not responsible directly for the rental office, but you certainly interacted, especially through the LHOs. I don't know what you're able to speak to, but I'll give the floor. I'll give you the floor.
I think that we would direct that question to the Department of Justice, who is doing a review of the legislation, the Rental Tenancies Act, and this was one of the 44 recommendations that was addressed, and Justice had an answer in that to that potential issue. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. I think we know the Minister of Justice, so we might ask him a question or two about that. Mr. McNeely.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Moving on to the general questions, the minister also shared in her statement here from last week that Housing NWT is actively exploring options to increase its own capacity as well as the LHOs. Can Housing NWT share more details on what options are being looked at and intended timelines for implementation? Further to that, Dr. Kelly, do we know anything about what the estimated cost and positions require to meaningfully increase capacity? Thank you.
Dr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So some of the internal examples where we've looked at internal resources and reprofiled or shifted would be that evaluation position that we discussed, where we knew we needed capacity for that, and that it could help with this work as well as other work that we're doing in the corporation. Another example would be some technical teams that we have. So there are some challenges in the Nahende, the Sawtooth, and the Beaufort Delta, where some of the repair projects, when they go out for RFP, there's no one bidding on them. So we've developed a pilot project where we're going to have technical teams at the district level that are going to go into community and work to do some of these repairs and try to attract local folks who are interested in trades to work with them to see if they need apprentice hours or if they, they might decide that they want to go into a trade. So those would be two examples of how we're restructuring internally. We are aware, and there has been a position assessment for LHOs, and we're aware that there are some gaps there. And we're currently in discussions internally about how those can be addressed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. McNeely.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Can you share more information about the status of deferred maintenance for public housing units in the NWT? Can you walk me through what is driving any variance in the deferred maintenance numbers across the regions? I'm looking to understand what changed, whether it reflects revised asset conditions information, project delays, cost escalations, or internal reprofiling. A short explanation on the main factors would help. Are there specific factors that impact some regions more than others? And can the corporation speak to how each region is performing against those pressures?
Sorry, Dr. Kelly.
So one of the main factors that we discussed is that sometimes there aren't folks available to do the work. Another factor is that we don't always have trades folks that are working at LHOs. There's been a real decrease in the amount of skilled trades in communities. And then I'll pass it over to Jim, if that's okay, for a further, more detailed response.
Mr. Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so some other factors certainly in terms of deferred maintenance would be age and condition of our units. Like right now, over 50% of our stock right now is over the age of 30 years, and we are seeing that as one of our major contributing factors to an increase in needed deferred maintenance. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. McNeely.
Thank you. Yeah, I know it's felt straight across the board in all departments in the private sector, as well, around workforce availability, particularly in skills. And going on, leading what are the unit costs to build a house in different parts of the NWT right now, region by region? I know there's various cost pressures with access, affordable access. Thank you.
Dr. Kelly. Now, Mr. Martin. Yeah, you don't need to be exhaustive about every region. If you could give us a range and then perhaps provide more detail on a follow-up. Mr. Martin.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Right now, Housing NWT's average cost of construction is in the range of about $600,000 per unit. And this does vary depending on a number of factors. So for example, like we recently awarded an 84-unit modular RFP, and the average cost there was about $520,000 per unit. So volume does play a role in the costing. And to speak to your point about logistics, transportation, logistics, et cetera, certainly we do see in terms of that range, in the more northern communities, we do certainly see higher costs compared to the southern. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, just following up on something piqued my interest when Mr. McNeely was asking a question around the details and options being looked at for timelines and implementation. And the answer was that in some regions, including the Beaufort Delta, obviously, which is my region, where contractors are simply not bidding. And I'm wondering, has there been an analysis done as to why that is? Certainly in my region, in my community of Inuvik, there are several contractors that do this type of work and have done it in the past, I know, with Housing NWT. So has there been any kind of analysis as to why that's not happening? Is it a tender issue? Is it an issue that they're just simply too busy? Or has there been any kind of analysis done on that by the department as to why they feel that's happening? Thank you.
Dr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I don't think Inuvik is the issue, but we have There's sometimes where there's work orders in Det'anchogh, for example, that are not being filled because there's not enough tradespeople to do the work, and the LHO is having a hard time staffing people. Same in some of the other small communities in your in your district. And then in the Henday, for sure, we've had challenges there where we've put out RFPs and they haven't been bid on. We've even talked about whether we could put them together as a group and try to put them out that way. So that we're looking at all different options, but this trades crew is a pilot project where we're going to see if it can actually help to build capacity within community as well by doing the work in community and trying to involve some of the folks there. And we'll have some metrics to see if it's successful or not. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Anything further, Mr. Rogers?
No, thank you, and I commend that, and I hope that you're very successful in doing that, but no, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So we'll get into the recommendations now. The first recommendation is monitoring LHOs to ensure requirements are being met. Dr. Kelly, your presentation mentioned that you will be conducting regular assessments of allocation practices. Can you share more information about what the framework might include and how frequently you will be doing the assessments? Dr. Kelly.
You ready? Vanessa, please.
Yes, Ms. Stretch, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are in the very early stages of scoping the framework for monitoring. There's a few different areas that we're looking at for this, but we'd be looking to monitor the allocations, the point rating system, how those points are being applied, looking at changes to point ratings throughout that process, and gathering feedback, additional feedback from the LHOs on where they think areas could further be monitored. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. What factors contribute to the LHO's ongoing performance challenges beyond resource constraints, and what steps is HNWT taking to respond to them and help them? Dr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So some of the guidance documents have required updating, which we're working on right now, and having those redistributed. I do think capacity is the main challenge, but making sure that there's clear guidance and that we're checking in that people are following that guidance. If I'm just trying to be very high level, that's what we're working on right now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Madame Pierre, would you agree with that assessment that the capacity piece is the largest challenge at the LHO level? Madame Pierre?
So we have heard during the audit that capacity was an issue at times. We understand that the corporation is working in collaboration with LHOs to better understand and to better support them. Actions are being presented today. I want to reiterate that it's going to be very important to see progress. So assessment and reporting on if eventually the capacity is helpful and there is more of the work that has been undertaken. So progress, monitoring the progress against the commitments.
Thank you. A part of it, the HNWT response to the recommendation states that the actions will be implemented in accordance with available resources. Now that Housing NWT is 4 months into implementing these recommendations, can the corporation comment on whether the existing financial and human resources are seemingly adequate to meet the October 2027 deadline? Dr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As we mentioned earlier, there are some challenges in that regard that we're trying to address. And I'd just like to speak a little bit to the capacity challenge, if you don't mind. So we have LHO staff and district staff who, where we got a bunch of home ownership money that came in, which was really great, but no additional staff to support that. And if you think about the amount of illegal activity that is happening in our communities, in public housing units, it's a huge capacity challenge, and it's very difficult because a lot of those folks weren't trained to be dealing with some of those issues. And so that has been a focal point for us, is to work with our LHO staff and also with some of the district staff to make sure that we're dealing with that, because it's very, I'm sure you can imagine how challenging it is when units are are being taken over by drug dealers and there's other illegal activity that's happening, and how to support folks that are nearby to those units and those that are in them who are experiencing this. It's not precedented in our history, right? From a housing perspective. So there are capacity challenges because things are different than they used to be. So I just want to highlight that. But we are working with LHOs. We recognize the importance of documenting and making sure that our processes are clear and that they're being followed. And we've committed to and are working on all of the different recommendations that were provided. I just wanted to give that nuanced point of view so that people are aware of when we're talking about capacity, what we're speaking to. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that clarification. I'm very aware of those challenges. The corporation notes that in responding to recommendation number 1 on paragraph 25, that your response will be done in conjunction with legislative amendments to the Housing NWT Act. Can the corporation provide more details on exactly which legislative changes are necessary and when you anticipate a legislative proposal will be brought forward to the Standing Committee on Accountability and Oversight? Dr. Kelly.
We're in the final stages of the review phase for the legislation at this time, and just having discussions about what that could look like. And we're still in line for the timeframes that have been put forward in the for legislation to the government. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Yes, and we won't anticipate when. Sorry, so the timeline that you've provided is going to be, you're going to meet the timeline is the plan? Yeah, okay. Seeing nodding of heads, so we'll move on from that. Last week, the Minister of Housing spoke in the House regarding scoping a new monitoring framework for LHOs, updating the LHO administration manual and touch points for the corporation and LHOs to increase training. Can you provide more details on each of those activities and how they are contributing to meeting the recommendation from the Office of the Auditor General? Dr. Kelly.
Could you please repeat those items that you mentioned? Thank you.
So that is the new monitoring framework for LHOs, updating the LHO administrative manual, and touch points for housing, NWT, and LHOs to increase training. Do we have the date that statement was delivered? We can find that, but I'm assuming you're familiar with it. Okay. Dr. Kelly, go ahead.
Thanks. I'll start and then I'll turn it to Vanessa, please. So the new monitoring framework and the updating the admin manual, they're in progress right now. We've already begun increasing training, but I'll ask, and sorry, I'll speak here to one of the trainings that I'm very aware of. We had the Dene Wellness Warriors come in and do some training based on what I was mentioning earlier, some of these needs for LHO staff who don't have experience with some of the really challenging things that are happening with illegal activity. So I want to just put a point on that. It's very challenging for folks when there's public housing residents calling and saying, please move me out of these units because there's all of this illegal activity going on. So part of it is to help to support them in some of those conversations, which can be very emotional. And then there's training related to their jobs, which I'll turn it over to Vanessa for.
Ms. Stretch.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To build on what Dr. Kelly has mentioned and what we previously noted around the monitoring framework, we are in the early stages of scoping kind of all the aspects of what can be monitored or should be monitored. We recognize that allocations is only one part of that we will be monitoring. So fully working with LHOs to develop all the areas that we'll be monitoring. Regarding the training, we do bring together all the LHO managers. We also bring together the tenant relations officers and some of the technical maintenance staff once a year together to share and learn from each other, as well as provide updates and changes to policies, procedures, and training opportunities. Like Dr. Kelly mentioned, the Wellness Warriors, as well as we've brought in our CMP and others to kind of help build some of the training. And then the other one was the manual. Yeah, that is underway. So updating the manual, and we hope to have updates and a draft to that early in the spring of this year.
Thank you. How many monthly meetings have happened between the corporation staff and the LHOs since the audit, or since you started developing your actions in response to the audit? Dr. Kelly?
We have annual meetings where we get together, and then they're having monthly meetings with the LHO and district staff, pardon me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. And at those meetings, what has the experience been like? Has the LHO staff been receptive to making changes? Because again, there's a lot of change that's going to happen at the corporation level that has to filter down to the LHOs. So is everyone kind of on board with the program? Dr. Kelly?
I think that people are very excited to be part of determining how that change will happen and making sure that their capacity is factored into those conversations. Because that's something that in the past, there was a feeling that it was being made at high level and that some of the changes, some of the responses were not possible because of capacity challenges. So this time we're working with folks to say, what can we do to make sure that we can address the concerns that have been brought forward by the OAG. Thank you.
Thank you. The GNWT's response to the report noted that, the corporation's response to the report noted that the plan is to collaborate between the LHOs and the corporation to streamline monitoring and incorporate best practices. Can Housing NWT share more information about ideal outcomes for how monitoring will be streamlined and which best practices the response is referring to? Dr. Kelly.
I can speak to the fact that in a past audit response, there was a very large monitoring framework that was developed and it was implemented for a short period of time and then it fell off because there wasn't the capacity to continue. So when we speak about streamlining monitoring, we're talking about how can we actually do this in a way that we'll be able to continue it over the long term so it's not so taxing that people stop doing it. Because we have to remember, I think what happens is people start focusing in on the work at the LHO and trying to address repair issues and all of these things that are happening on a regular basis. And sometimes the monitoring falls into the background. So how do we make it part of people's jobs where it's not something that is onerous to the point that they're feeling like they don't want to do it, right? Those discussions are still ongoing right now to figure out how we get there. Or do we have to make some changes to the frequency because it's not actually achievable, what we've been saying in the past, and find ways to make sure that we're still getting the information that we need, but it might not need to be done as frequently as what we had said before. So we're having those conversations as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. And when you mentioned best practices, where are those coming from? Is it just based on your experience, as you just mentioned, or are you looking to other housing organizations and seeing how these monitoring frameworks go and incorporating those practices? Dr. Kelly.
We've definitely looked at what other, in particular, northern housing organizations are doing. I think, and I would comment here that their audits weren't, had issues as well as ours. So there seems to be a northern issue. So we're meeting with the other jurisdictions to have conversations about things that we're experiencing collectively as territories, and that will be an opportunity to learn from them as well. But we do have relationships with Nunavut and the Yukon as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Do you know when that meeting's taking place, or is it just a kind of a plan to start meeting? Dr. Kelly?
Thank you. It was scheduled, I think, for this week, and it had to be rescheduled, so it'll be after March break. We're looking for a time right now. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. The GNWT response to the report committed to conducting an external review to examine the structure and governance of LHOs, assess current monitoring practices, and identify opportunities to improve allocation processes. This review will include an analysis of best practices from other jurisdictions. Can you clarify, I think you may have mentioned this, but that this external review to this issue in particular has begun, and what other jurisdictions that look promising to be the kind of foundation of the jurisdictional review that you want to emulate here in the Northwest Territories for governance? Dr. Kelly.
I can speak to the fact that the RFP development is underway for this, and that we have plans for when it will be awarded. I think that we would ask folks through the RFP to look at the different options for different jurisdictions and provide recommendations to us on what they think would be relevant. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So you don't have any changes in mind at this time, Dr. Kelly?
What I would say is that some other northern jurisdictions have made some changes already, and we would be looking at what those changes, are they successful, and are they things that we want to contemplate? Most certainly, but we're open to other ideas through the RFP as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Mr. McNeely?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On the subject of policy modernization for equitable public housing allocation, the GNWT's response to the audit notes that Housing NWT will review and update policies, procedures, and guidelines on the point rating system and tenant transfers to promote fairness, transparency, and consistency, and that this will be done with a review to ensuring policies are person-centered and culturally appropriate. Further to this, the response to Social Development's Housing as a Human Right report, the corporation noted that the GNWT is open to continuing to evolve its point rating system with its ongoing work to recognize the differing and evolving circumstances of those along with housing's continuum through its delivery programs. And the question is, what further changes might the corporation be considering as part of the next iteration of an updated point rating system? Thank you.
Dr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can give you a good example of one that we just did. So when we were in Det'anchogh, we could see there that there was an issue because there's a small number of transitional housing units there, but nobody was able to get into them because in the point rating system, it would show that they were housed. So their points would be lower, but we want people to be moving through transitional housing and then getting into social housing so we can have more people supported through transitional housing. So we were able to update the point system so that we can allow folks to access public housing through transitional housing and have people moving through. Otherwise, what was happening is people were being stuck in transitional housing for years and years because they weren't able to move through, and we adjusted the point system. That'll be really helpful. You can see that there's more transitional housing going up in our communities, and our hope is that there'll be more in the future. So that change will allow us to assist with that movement through transitional housing into social housing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. McNeely?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks to Dr. Aaron Kelly there for providing that example on readjusting your point system. My question now is to the OAG here. Are there additional considerations or factors you would recommend Housing NWT consider as part of an update to the point rating system? Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Chair, so the audit did not assess the rating system itself. That's a decision of the corporation, government, how they want to see the points allocated. So we don't opine on those decisions. What we want to reiterate is that making sure that the system will allow to prioritize those who are most in need. So that's really the focus.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. McNeely?
Yes, thank you for that reply here. To Dr. Aaron Kelly, we agree person-centered and culturally appropriate is an important driver of an equity-based approach for the allocation of public housing. Can you tell committee more about how this is practically applicable or applied in the context of housing and the points rating system? Thank you.
Dr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the most important things we've been talking about recently is how critical it is that folks come in when they're on the wait list and continue to update the LHO as to their status, because that changes their point system, right? Their point rating, pardon me. And so part of the person-centric approach is we know that there are many folks out there where housing NWT, it's a challenge for them, and they've had challenges in the past. And we're trying really hard to rebuild relationships with LHOs and communities to show that we're there to help and support. It's challenging because we don't have enough infrastructure. We don't have enough units for everyone. But the point system inherently is person-centric because it's about the needs that they have. And that's why sometimes it's really challenging, because you may be third on the list and then all of a sudden you're not because some other person has applied and they have different needs that need to be addressed faster than you do, right? And I think that one of the things we need to do is communicate what the point system is about, because many people don't know how important it is to keep updating that point system and telling us where they're at and interacting with their LHO over time, because the points, that's the way that the units are allocated, right? So that if we can get people to trust and we can work to have those relationships, that is a person-centric approach in itself, right? It's not, right now, there's some challenges with that because of historic relationships with the corporation, and what we're trying to address those and improve those relationships. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. McNeely?
Thank you, Dr. Aaron Kelly, for that reply. I can really understand the challenges here in today's society. You're designing a point rating system here to allow the tenant to move in here in today's society is plagued with a bunch of challenges and totally different compared to years ago. My next one is based on the sample sizes and the Housing NWT's work with the LHOs, can the corporation estimate how many cases may have been impacted by a lack of equity? Thank you.
Dr. Kelly?
I don't think we can. And from my perspective, part of this is that because there's was ad hoc monitoring that was going on, we don't know whether it was equitable or not, right? Like I understand the OAG and I agree with your perspective, but we need to increase the monitoring to be able to address that. So I think the answer is that at this time, I don't think we can do that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Madam Chair, do you have any observations to that point? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the sample was representative, so the methodology speaks to the conclusion that could be generalized. But I would agree with Dr. Kelly that given that the monitoring was not done on a systematic approach, we could be speculating to the broader number that were impacted.
Okay, thank you. Ms. McNeely, go ahead.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Dr. Kelly, is Housing NWT planning any follow-up action regarding cases where there is a lack of equity? Thank you.
Granted, we don't know what that lack of equity is. What is your response if it emerges? Like if you are confronted with a case where that concern is brought forward, do you have a plan to deal with that, Dr. Kelly?
We would definitely look at it on a case-by-case basis. Where we're focusing on is ensuring that it's equitable, ongoing, and we're putting our effort into that at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. McNeely, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thanks, Doc. Aaron Kelly will just say it, further consideration or to be explored. My next one of the findings of the audit was that eligibility residents waited an average of about 2 years for a public housing unit in the Northwest Territories as of March 31st, 2025. Can the corporation share what the wait timelines are for each regional center? And if there are any trends observed for the wait times over time, example, going up or going down?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It would be very difficult to share that because it's also dependent on the unit size across the board. I can speak generally, though. So there are areas of the territory that have very long wait lists. And when there's a very long wait list, there's usually longer time before people get into units. We have, and this was identified in the Territorial Housing Needs Assessment, we have a population where we need more single units, and those aren't prominent in many of the communities because you have families where there's adults that are still in the home and there's nowhere for them to move to. That's one of the reasons that when we got the initial data, we've started as Housing NWT to look to put small, like bachelor and one bedrooms into smaller communities so that people can find places to live. But if you have a need where there are very few units, so that can sometimes be like 4-bedroom units for big families or small units for people, there'll be long wait lists and people are waiting a long time for those. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. So the member was asking for wait times for each regional center. Is that data available, Dr. Kelly?
We would have to parse it out by 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, 4 bedrooms per community, so we could look at that and get back to committee.
Thank you. Then we will expect that information. Mr. McNeely, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can Housing NWT share some of the specific projects that are being undertaken now and planned for in the near future, and what impact that will have on wait times in the next 5 years? Thank you.
Dr. Kelly?
So you're aware of the capital plan for the next few years. So there's, but most of those are replacement units. All of them are replacement units. So that shouldn't have much of an impact on the wait list because we're replacing existing units that are old and need to be replaced. What we're hopeful for is that with Build Canada Homes, we'll be able to access funding for new homes and we'll be able to put some resources towards those areas that have big wait lists. And we know that we'll need 1-bedroom units, bachelor units, small units. The Territorial Housing Needs Assessment is a great tool that we'll be able to use with the federal government to show them that we know what the housing needs are for our communities. So I don't know that right now it's all focused on ensuring that we can replace the old housing units that we have because we don't want our clients that we have now not to have a place to stay, right? That's what that money has been put towards. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Yeah, I think it's, there's I think it's been updated, but for a while it was 313 new builds and then around, I think close to 700 rehabs that's part of the capital plan. I think that number's higher for the new builds, but for the new units that are coming forward, is that expected to reduce wait times by any kind of substantive measure, given that they are new stock that's coming online? And this is part of the 3-year, $150 million investment. Dr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the repairs will help with the wait list in communities because if we have some additional funding now, so we can be updating units and that don't have anyone in them and having people move into those units. So that will help. But most of those, all of the new builds are public housing replacement. So you know, you would have some folks moving into those, but we're replacing units that sometimes people are still living in 50-year-old units.
Thank you. Do you have the current numbers of new builds and?
Jim can provide that.
Dr. Martin? Sorry, Mr. Martin.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. So according to our current 3-year capital plan, so over the next 3 years, we are planning to deliver 152 public housing replacements with the new funding that we did receive from the NWT. And right now, our current estimate for over the 3-year period is to complete 860 repairs, unit repairs. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Martian. Mr. McDonald, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Of the units that are on the repair list, how many of those are single units?
Mr. Martian?
I think we'll have to get back to committee on that. Very few though, right? We don't have the list. Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. We don't have an exact number today, but we could certainly provide that to committee. But we do expect that the majority certainly would be multi-unit in nature. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. McDonald?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Mr. McNeely?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just going back to the 5-year plan and waiting times, I would recommend to the corporation to utilize a community of the Det'anchogh government and have your 5-year plan, the wait list, being compared to address the demand with the self-government of Det'anchogh. It would really, in my books, it would really show government to government addressing and narrowing down the wait times and addressing the demand with the 5-year plan. And I think there'd be a lot of benefits to showing how government to government's working together through a 5-year plan to address the demand and narrow down the wait times. So that's just a suggestion to the corporation. My question there, Dr. Kelly, is in your presentation, you note that Housing NWT is currently developing a framework for tenant transfer processes to be incorporated into the territorial housing system. Can you share more about the framework and the objectives for this work? Thank you.
Ms. Stretch? Nope. Who would like to? Are we bringing in a? Okay, we're switching out. Okay. Go ahead, just introduce yourself for the record and proceed.
Hi, I'm Ella Newhook. Sorry. Yes, we've started working on the framework of the tenant transfer policy in THS. So we're looking at all the different reasons why a tenant would want to transfer if they are currently living in their unit. It's not just over and under accommodations. You would actually be looking at different social reasons that may occur, such as a senior needing to move closer to a hospital, for example.
Thank you. Okay, noting the time, because it's now almost 8 o'clock, we're going to take a 15-minute break just to give people some time to refresh, and then we'll come back and conclude our hearing. So we are going to be recessed for 15 minutes. I'll call the standing committee back to order, and we'll start with Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My questions are around recommendation number 3, the unit conditions and maintenance. With the first question to Dr. Kelly. Has the housing needs assessment process identified any areas where capital plans should or could be updated because of inaccurate condition assessments?
Dr. Kelly.
We definitely used the territorial housing needs assessment data to determine where the 3 years of capital that the GNWT has provided, and we will continue to do that ongoing. I think and we used condition data, age of unit data, that sort of thing, so we've already been doing that. The territorial housing needs assessment data, we had the quantitative data, we've had that for over a year, so we've been able to use that in our processes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Rogers.
Thank you. Can the Corp share some more information around the pilot and the pilot and third-party condition assessments of public housing units and assets in the 3 communities? So is it currently funded by the corporation budget, or is that money yet to be appropriated?
Dr. Kelly.
My understanding is that this pilot will be using the same process that the Department of Infrastructure uses, and we've asked them to help us to identify which communities, and they will go and use their process on some of our units, and we will do a comparison, and the funding for it is being found from within.
Mr. Rogers.
Okay, thank you. So how are you determining, I guess, which 3 communities, and pending success for those 3 communities, what is the capacity and timing to expand that to additional communities?
Dr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we are working with infrastructure to see which communities in the Beaufort Delta they will be doing, and we will be asking them to do the pilot on our housing units that are in those communities. So we want to have the pilot be where they're going to be spending time upcoming, and then we will use the results of that to determine its applicability across more of our housing units. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Rogers.
Thank you. Okay, so infrastructure will be deciding those communities through their department.
Working together.
Collaboration, okay, thank you. How will Housing NWT strengthen its performance metrics for unit conditions and maintenance so they remain reliable during disruptions such as wildfires, community evacuations, or other events that the LHOs could potentially face?
Dr. Kelly.
Scott, please.
Mr. Reed.
Hello, my name is Scott Reed. I'm the Director of Infrastructure Services. If I can get the question again, I was in the back, and thanks.
Go ahead, Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the question was how will you strengthen the performance, its performance metrics for the unit conditions, the maintenance, so they remain reliable during disruptions such as wildfires, community evacuations, or are there any other, I guess, emergencies or disruptions that the LHOs could encounter?
Mr. Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So our approach will be that we do these every 2 years, and we utilize trained personnel to do those condition ratings. In the event of a wildfire or some kind of incident, we would assess and see how we might be able to do it in the off times to still continue to ensure that the required condition assessments are completed. As Dr. Kelly noted, we're also going to be piloting some third-party assessments to help validate those assessments, which will also then we can utilize in the future to ensure that our condition assessments are as accurate as they can be. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rogers.
Thank you. So then, will additional supports, or what additional supports will, I guess, the Housing NWT provide to the LHOs to kind of help them meet those expectations?
Dr. Kelly.
I'll just add here that on a regular fire year, you wouldn't have as many communities that has been evacuated as more recent times, right? And that as the fires are burning around communities. They're in some ways fire smarting them. We don't see this as being a major issue ongoing for a lot of the communities that we have. So this is based on my old ECC days, I would say there. So I think that there have been a few years where we've had a lot of fires near communities, and it's caused challenges for folks because it wasn't like you could access support from other communities when many of them are evacuated at the same time. That's not a usual circumstance, but we are, as Scott said, working to improve that process. We don't see that this is going to be as big of an issue ongoing as it was for those years. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. McDonald?
So if you were to run into that situation, do you have a backup plan where you could pivot your resources to another community, so you sort of don't lose that, window of time, if that was to happen?
Dr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's what we've been working on as well. Thank you
Mr.
for
McDonald?
that wording.
Mr. McDonald, anything further?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Mr. Rogers?
Appreciate that. So in the incremental implementation approach, is the expectation that some LHOs will move at different paces depending on resources, or that all will move through the milestones as they can be reached?
Mr. Reid?
Sorry, which incremental approach you're talking about with condition assessments?
Correct.
Okay. It will be incremental. We will start with folks that are experienced in doing assessments, and through our training, as was mentioned earlier, we'll continue to train staff, whether it's regional staff and/or LHO staff, in the condition rating process. We've provided training in the past, and we'll continue to do that as we go forward incrementally as required.
Mr. Rogers?
Thank you. And what costs and service agreements will accompany the expansion of the application of the online reporting tools and pilot digital devices to facilitate timely reporting on performance outcomes that are referenced in the corporation's response to the recommendation?
Mr. Reid?
At this point in time, there's no incremental cost associated with that. It's going to be done internally with ourselves and the infrastructure folks who manages the Power BI, and so we're working with them to develop those online reports for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rogers, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And can you share some more information about the online preventative maintenance reporting that was developed and what's planned for the release in the spring of 2026?
Mr. Reid?
Sure. So the preventative maintenance reports, or the PM reports, shows completion and outstanding by community that each region, each LHO has access to. The newer reports that are coming, we're now going to be developing reports for demand maintenance, for our regular maintenance, to show what's outstanding and what is completed. We will look at other reports such as timelines to complete reports. That was one of the suggested discussion points with the OAG as part of the audit. So we're looking at expanding those types of management reports that could provide good key indicators as to how the maintenance is being performed on a community-by-community basis. Thank you.
Mr. Rogers?
Thank you. You said in your presentation that over the next 2 years, Housing NWT will be completing at least 3 UCR verifications for each LHO, which will be at least 72 verifications. So as per established process, is there any appetite for or capacity to increase the number of verifications for each LHO?
Mr. Reid?
At this time, as was noted earlier, capacity is a challenge in a lot of communities. So that is our agreed upon process right now. We're always looking to improve, and this third-party assessment that we're implementing this year, it will do more than that with this one time to see. But at this point in time, capacity is challenged to do more than that in a year. Thank you. Or in 2 years, sorry.
Anything further? No. Mr. McDonald?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So my questions will be around recommendation 4, supporting LHOs for maintenance activities. As part of the GNWT response to the OAG's recommendation to support LHOs with maintenance activities, The modernization of the Community Housing Services Agreement was identified as a key action. Can Housing NWT provide a status update on that modernization work and the collaborative process that began in 24-25? And what does that collaboration process look like in practice? And what goals or milestones have been achieved to date?
Dr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's in the internal review phase at this point. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Can you elaborate on what that internal review looks like, perhaps, to get at the member's question? Dr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can say that it's not at my level of internal review at this point yet, so I can ask Vanessa if she has anything to add.
Ms. Stretch.
Yeah, I think we're just reviewing kind of the different components of the agreements and be getting some legal review or support as well on the kind of components of that, but very early stages at this point. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mr. McDonald?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So what are the training investments that have been identified that would best support the LHOs in improving their maintenance outcomes?
Dr. Kelly? Or Mr. Reed?
Sure. Thank you for the question. Mr. Chair, we have our annual workshop every year with our technical and our LHOs come in and meet. And during that time, we discuss particular challenges that LHOs are experiencing. From that meeting, we recognize that there's certain training that's required. For example, more recently, we've moved into biomass heating systems, and that was an area that was identified as a need for additional training. So with that, we participated in a couple of biomass training sessions with Arctic Energy Alliance. So those are the types of things that we do and talk about during those meetings to identify those training needs. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. McDonald?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Interesting example, the biomass. So what, have you done any kind of cost estimates on what those investments would come down to costing you? Just knowing that that is probably not a skill set that you're going to find in a lot of the communities to do that work around the biomass. So.
Dr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So recently with the Yellowknife Housing Authority, there's been a contractor who's been helping to support us on the biomass, but what we've looked at is making sure that we have someone trained and solely working on biomass as we add buildings that have biomass systems. So there's some new buildings that'll be coming online, including Aspen, that have those biomass systems. So what we've been doing is working with the LHOs and asking them and talking to them about capacity and then addressing it. So we added a staff member for Yellowknife Housing Authority that will be dealing fully with biomass. In other communities, we've made relationships with infrastructure, and they have some people sometimes in communities that can manage and maintain those systems. And we've been discussing with them whether there's opportunities to work together to maintain our systems as well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. McDonald?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So you had previously mentioned apprentices, and I understand that may have been more on the construction side, but have there been thoughts around trying to attract apprentices on the maintenance side as well?
Dr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're always looking to attract apprentices on all of the sides of our work, and we'll definitely take that back. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. McDonald?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Has the formal documentation of quarterly maintenance activity reporting through the new proactive process been implemented?
Mr. Reed?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It will be implemented in 26-27 as part of the updating reports. So the first report is expected to come out in June of 2026.
Mr. McDonald?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What are the changes to process and the documentation itself that have been or will be undertaken as part of that work?
Mr. Reed?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The additional, it will be basically documentation. The information is in our systems, our maintenance management system that we currently use. We just need to more formalize it and have those meaningful discussions at the LHO level on the progress on the quarterly reports and then, ensure those reports are documented. Thank you,
Mr.
Mr. Chair.
McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. How will Housing NWT support the LHOs in helping them improve compliance with existing and new requirements? And can the corporation share more about what is planned for any enforcement?
Mr. Reed? Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I mean, what we'll do is when we do those quarterly reviews and eventually the annual reviews that will also come with those, we will be able to see gaps. We'll be able to identify gaps of where their challenges may be, and from those gaps analysis, we can then determine what the next best steps are, whether it's additional resources, some additional training. But until we do those formal engagements with the LHOs, we don't have that information right now, but that's the planned step, is to have those discussions and develop those requirements based on information received. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. So what are the consequences of lack of compliance? Like, that's I think the key to that enforcement question. Like, if, I get that we want to support the LHOs and not be punitive or anything, but if the policies aren't being followed, there has to be a consequence, or else why have them? So what is the plan to address that? Maybe that's best sent to Dr. Kelly. Dr. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is one of the reasons that we want to talk to the LHOs about some of these process pieces, and I'll just be honest here. There are some significant capacity challenges at LHOs, and in some cases, the district offices are heavily supporting the LHOs to be able to get their work done. And I think what we would continue to do is try to support them to get that work done, and if need be, find resources to work closely with them. But in the time that I've been at housing, I've seen our technical folks go above and beyond to go out and try to help to support LHOs that are struggling to get some of this work done. And our new technical teams that we talked about that are going to be in some of those some of our districts will also be able to support in that way should that be required. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Madam Chair, do you have any comments on the compliance issues or how policies are, what you observed in the audit on how policies were being followed and the supports therein?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it's important to have the dialogue. The corporation has committed to have those conversations, but at the end of the day, work needs to be done. And you, Mr. Chair, have said, what are the consequences when there's no compliance? So these need to be addressed, and we need to keep in mind that when the work is not performed accordingly, there are individuals who are in need of these suitable housing, so there are consequences and implications for them.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can Housing NWT give more details on what a complete modernization of the maintenance management system looks like and what has been completed since 2023?
Mr. Reed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We upgraded our computerized maintenance management system. We had a system that was implemented about 13 years ago. And in 2023, we struck a working group of LHO maintenance staff, district technical staff, and headquarters staff to review some options on where we wanted to go with our computerized maintenance management system. And the decision was to upgrade the WebWorks system, which is what it was called, to Azure, which other GNWT uses right now, Department of Infrastructure, DOT, MACA, and Stanton. So we went and we worked with Taro, the developer, in great detail to develop a system that worked for Housing NWT. And we implemented it in October, provided training to all of our 24 LHOs, and we continued to provide the support and the ongoing training as it stands today. And from those, we will be doing the reports, the online reports will also come into that data system. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The minister shared last week in the House that Housing NWT has now completed a capacity gap assessment for maintenance activities. Can Housing NWT share the results with the committee?
Mr. Reed?
Sure, I'll take that one. Maintenance gaps, so what we do is we've, with our data that's in our maintenance management system for all our work orders, we've assessed that there's a numerous amount of work orders that remain to be not completed yet. Some work has been done, but not completed. We've assessed what type of work that is, whether it's electrical work, carpentry. So we've done that analysis, and some of that work now will be, when we're looking at the trades teams, we can assess what capacity we need to hire to do that work. We do recognize that carpentry is one of the main issues, along with some of the heating and plumbing. So we would be focused in that area to when we work on those trade teams.
Mr. McDonald?
Thank you.
So as part of that assessment, have you looked at if contractor availability is contributing to that, that gap, whether it's electrical or plumbing or carpentry or whatever the case may be? I know in the smaller communities that can certainly be an ongoing challenge, I guess, to find qualified tradespeople, so.
Mr. Reed?
Thank you. Thank you, yes. Thank you for that, and absolutely, we looked at that assessment. As Dr. Kelly mentioned earlier here tonight, that in the Henday, for example, we struggle at getting contractors to come in and do some of that work. So that is certainly part of the assessment and analysis that we undertook. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Good. So recommendation 5, procedural guidance for home ownership programs. Can the corporation provide a status update on the work Housing NWT is undertaking to update and expand guidance on verifying and documenting home ownership program eligibility and prioritization by April 2027? Dr. Kelly?
Vanessa, please.
Ms. Stretch?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Mr. Chair. We're currently taking the feedback that was received from the Auditor General's staff through this process and trying to incorporate changes into the policies and procedures that exist for some of the minor documentation issues and other areas of our policies and procedures currently, and are on track to meet that timeline. Thank you.
Thank you. Further to that, what does the corporation anticipate will change after its review of its home ownership programs, considering the goal of modernizing policies and procedures and better reflecting current needs? Ms. Stretch?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are doing kind of adjacent to this, a review of some of our home ownership programs more broadly, and so we'll be aligning the policies and procedures to those future changes with those programs, but making the kind of changes needed in the policies and procedures currently that will provide the clarity to provide the documentation that was lacking in the OAG findings. Thank you.
Thank you. In response to the audit, the corporation stated that it is in the process of exploring additional resources to build organizational capacity to support routine file audits and monitoring. Has the corporation staffed positions for this work or done training? If not, what is your plan to do so? Dr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as I mentioned earlier, we've been looking at internal resources and how we can reprofile some of the work that we're doing, or we have an organizational review that's going on right now, and we have all of the groups looking to see if there's ways that we can be more efficient and effective with the resources that we have. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Do you feel like you have the additional resources, I guess? Like, I know that's a loaded question in an environment where there's lots of competing resources, but this kind of goes back to the compliance piece. If you don't have people who can do the audits and do the monitoring, then we might be back in the same place. So is there enough internal capacity to take on this this process of involving better monitoring and audit functions? Dr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We're doing the best we can with what we have. And some of this work, as you know, is in the beginning stages. So we're trying to stage some of the work so that people are available to do it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Did you have, no? Mr. Rogers?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess I'll take us home with recommendation number 6, which is the monitor performance of home ownership programs. Mr. Chair, the Speaker shared last week in the House that Housing NWT is doing an evaluation of its home ownership programs through the Government Renewal Initiative. Can the corporation share some more information about what that work entails? Specifically, will the 2 positions that we know have been allocated to program design and evaluate, will that be enough capacity? And then as to what criteria, including cost of living inflation, will be reflected in the analysis of the current needs? Thank you.
Dr. Kelly?
We have one new position, and the incumbent is doing a great job of working with us across the team to support the evaluation work. There are some programs where we're farther along than others, but we have plans to review the other programs as well. I don't have a lot of detail at this time because we're still in the process of developing the frameworks. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Rogers?
Thank you. And further to that, I guess, does the funding for home ownership programs meet the needs that the programs are intended to address? And has the corporation explored options to enhance funding to support stronger program performance?
Dr. Kelly?
The homeownership repair programs are oversubscribed, and in some cases very much oversubscribed. So we don't have enough funding to address the needs. We also know and have worked with Indigenous governments who have done some recent assessments on needs for homeownership repairs in communities, and they far surpass the budget that we have even for Indigenous government, smaller communities looking at this. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. McDonald?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So in these home ownership programs, has there been any kind of evaluation done on value for money, if you will, in that as these contracts, et cetera, are put out, or do you feel that, or is there data to support that you're getting fair bids, I guess, and not, well, maybe not fair isn't the right word, but bids that are reflective of the work that's being done and not solely based on, you know, the knowledge of what the potential budget could be, because a lot of the times that sort of knowledge level is pretty public, that, you know, the programs are public-facing programs and they know what the sort of threshold is that folks can apply for. So do you think that has there been any work, I guess, in that area would be my question.
Yes, when the cost of lunch is equal to the GNWT per diem. Dr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are aware of some considerations in that regard for sure, where folks are aware of how much the Housing Corporation is paying for certain services. What we have been focusing on is working with Indigenous governments and providing support, for example, for them to have their members and their teams do work in communities. We found that to be a very effective way, and the dollars go farther on average, I would say, using that approach. It's one of the things that we're looking at moving forward is for those that have the capacity for Indigenous governments to take on doing some of this work, and Indigenous governments are asking us for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And just, I'll turn to the Madame Pierre. Like, have you done any analysis, your office done any analysis on value for money for the home ownership programs to the member's question, Madame Pierre?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The audit did not look at the value for money for the specific programs. We focused mostly on how the rating systems were applied and to make sure that the people who are most in needs were prioritized. So that was the focus of the audit.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Ms. Yankalai.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Given that, Madam, the President said that home ownership programs are oversubscribed in the communities, and the question was, has the corporation explored options to enhance funding to support stronger program performance? Thank you.
Dr. Kelly?
Explore other options.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We received a big budget increase for these programs, and it's not enough because the need for owned homes and communities to be repaired is so strong. I will say that there's a real balance between supporting these programs and supporting public housing in the territory. It's the same people in the districts that are working to get this money out the door for home ownership and are also supporting LHOs in communities, if you think about it from a technical standpoint and from a program management perspective. So one of the things that we've looked at here and we've been talking about is how can we work to have potentially others, as I mentioned, doing some of this work so that the people that are in the districts can be supporting the LHOs to address some of the other concerns that have been brought forward by the OAG. I just want to be clear, it's not like there's separate teams that are doing it, it's the same people in the districts that are working on all of these together. So no, we haven't looked for additional funding because there was additional funding that was provided by the GNWT. We have supported Indigenous governments through our Community Housing Support Initiative, which is another funding pot, to do some repair work. And we've certainly spoken with Indigenous governments that when they're going to Ottawa and asking for some of these supports, that we would be supportive of their efforts. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And Dr. Kelly, do you find, is there, where the programs are like most oversubscribed, I guess, or where you have the most need for resources, is it, I would assume it's in the non-market communities where the majority of the housing stock is your assets or LHO assets. Is that an accurate guess, I suppose, so of where the most need is based on the resource demands?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the biggest challenge we see are in small communities where there aren't a lot of owned homes, and so there aren't a lot of options. So in many small communities, you can't sell your house if it's too much for you to take care of and move somewhere else because there is no other option for where you're going to move. And so in those cases, we see a real need to focus in and provide resources to those folks and to help them with home repairs, versus in larger communities where you have the opportunity to move into an apartment or some other way of living. There are many communities in the NWT where that isn't an option. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Ms. Yekalai, anything further?
Thank you. One of my colleagues brought it up before, and I remember that, Public Works used to provide a lot of these services for home repairs in communities. This was years ago. It used to be called the Department of Public Works, where they had carpenters, plumbers, and they go into they do work in. So that was one idea that was brought up again. And is that something that has been looked at, or will housing think about doing something like that in the future?
Dr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think the equivalent are these programs that we have on an application basis, because we don't have enough resources for everyone. And we look at the solution in our discussions with Indigenous governments as working together. So I can give you an example with some of the communities or Indigenous governments that we have MOUs with. If the repairs are more than what our budget is, the Indigenous government is topping it up, or they're coming, we're having discussions about who needs what and trying to support them in that way. It's one of the discussions, as we mentioned, is that some of the Indigenous governments, they're ready to take over doing this type of work for their communities, and we're trying to support them where we can with the budget we have available. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anything further, Ms. Yekalai?
No, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Rogers?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You alluded to, obviously, you received many more applications for the programs than it funds. And we know, and you know as MLAs, I'm sure you get to bring forward, Dr. Kelly, from different regions, from folks who have applied and for various reasons were not able to access this. Can you kind of give the common reasons why applications are being rejected throughout the territory?
Dr. Kelly?
Sometimes people don't meet criteria, and, but mostly I would say there's not enough money to fund all of the applications for that repair work. I think, I was looking at it yesterday, I'll just turn around to Jim. In some communities, it's over double the amount of applications that are put forward to what we can actually do for folks.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Madam Pierre, do you want to comment on your findings to the reason applications were rejected?
So the audit did not look at the reasons, but if you look at Exhibit 7, it speaks to the volume of the number of applications that come in. We also want to stress that the pockets of money that is allocated is different in different of those different programs. So we hope that this information can help the committee to have those conversations with the corporation and monitor what the changes are being made to address some of these issues.
Thank you, Madam Pierre. Mr. Rogers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, so without putting you on the spot, for these home ownership programs, how much would you estimate would be required to meet the needs?
Dr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Off the top of my head, I don't have that information. And I think I would just point out the challenge from the Housing Corporation standpoint of looking at it that way, because we mentioned earlier that there's 495 public housing units that need to be replaced so that people can remain housed. So there's a real tension between making sure that we're supporting adequately, public housing, at the same time as supporting those residents, right? So I don't think I can answer that question at this time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Further to that, perhaps not at this time, but can the corporation do the analysis of that and provide it to committee? Based on it doesn't have to be current applications, but even if you looked at the applications during the audit period, that way we could have kind of an apples and apples comparison of what those costs look like. Dr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So we'll have to go back and look, because sometimes when a request comes in and it isn't funded, we don't have the amount that it would cost to do. We just have the information on what they were wanting to have done. But we can do our best to provide some information regarding this to the best of our ability. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Mr. Rogers?
Yeah, so based on that, the number of applicants that aren't approved, I guess, is there anything that you can look to that the corporation can do to kind of help applicants prepare their applications that are likely to be more accepted?
Dr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I don't think that it's a matter of them not filling in their application properly. It's a matter of there's not enough money for all of the applications. But if we go back, we'll do a little analysis, and if there is anything related to that, we can include that in the response. Thank you.
Do you have when it comes to these applications, is it first come, first serve, or is there more criteria to that? If we are dealing with a limited pot of funds, do you prioritize how those funds are allocated based on appropriate need, or is it just first come, first serve? Dr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It depends on which of the programs in the stream, right? So there are some that are first come, first serve, and there are others where they're looked at across the applications.
Mr. Rogers?
You mentioned Indigenous governments as well. How would the corporation describe its role moving forward in providing home ownership programs, considering the uptick in Indigenous government-led and locally led home ownership programs in recent years?
Dr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's something that's evolving, and what we're doing is talking to the Indigenous governments about how we can work together. So we have, as I mentioned, really strong relationships with some Indigenous governments where we're actually several that I can think of where we're putting money together to address some of the housing needs. There are others that are interested in doing it on their own, or In some cases, we're providing through the Community Housing Support Initiative, funding for them to do it on their own, to go and repair units, and they make the decisions about what needs to be done in their communities. So what I would say is, whatever way the Indigenous government wants to work with us, with the resources we have available, we're working to partner and collaborate. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. I will ask Madame Pierre, I know this wasn't your scope of audit, but certainly in your review, you most likely encountered the Indigenous collaboration mechanisms, whether they be MOUs or ad hoc, formal, informal partnerships. Do you have any comments on the performance of that relationship as it relates to your audit scope?
The chair, certainly the team has looked at some of the work that has been done for the consultations. If I may, I would look to Ms. Schwartz.
Ms. Schwartz?
If she could provide some insight.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as you mentioned, we didn't specifically look at that as part of our audit, but what we did note in the report when we talked about the public housing needs and whether the corporation was looking at the needs, that was one area that we had seen that they had engaged with Indigenous residents to identify some of the needs there. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Ms. Schwartz. And did those, what you looked at, were those what am I looking at, like an enhancement to those, like, did they help solve problems, I guess is the easiest way to put it, where you observed them, Ms. Schwartz?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What we did find in the audit was that while there was, work with the Indigenous residents to discuss their needs, the activities were ad hoc. And it wasn't really part of a comprehensive needs approach. So we're not able to say if there was like a specific strategy that was taken to learn about the needs. It was more done in an ad hoc manner.
Okay. Thank you. Dr. Kelly, do you want to comment on that, just because we've brought it up?
Yes, actually, the territorial housing needs assessment was not completed for the auditors. So I would say that there's been work, and I mentioned many of the other ways that we're engaging with Indigenous governments. From my perspective, the conversations through the MOUs and some of the work that we're doing through those and the CHSI relationships, which are proposal-based, and Indigenous governments provide proposals. For us, those are not ad hoc mechanisms. They're mechanisms where we have agreements with Indigenous governments. So I think that there's been some work done since the audit period that has been positive in that regard. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Committee, last call for questions. Mr. Rogers?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just the one, and in your analysis then, are there any gaps that you think that maybe if GNWT was to introduce new programs and funding to kind of address some of those unmet needs, are there any gaps, I guess, identified in this that you could speak to?
Dr. Kelly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we can speak better to that once we do the reviews of the programs. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The third-party reviews.
We're doing program reviews of those programs. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Rogers, anything further?
No, Mr. Chair. No, I can say thank you.
Madam Pierre, did you identify any gaps in the audit that you can point to the member's point, or is that out of scope?
It's out of scope.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Short and sweet. Thank you very much. Well, no one mentioned the Dow, so I think we had a good meeting today, and good witnesses, so thank you very much. I will allow members or our witnesses to close, to provide closing comments. So I'll start with Dr. Kelly.
We really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you today and to answer the questions, and we hope that you can see that we're serious about addressing these issues, and we have a good plan that we'll implement with the resources that we have available. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Madam Pierre?
Mr. Chair, we also appreciate the opportunity to support the committee in its work. It's important, as we said earlier, to keep an eye on the actions. We see that you have asked very pointed questions, and we believe that the the work that you are looking at is important. Again, thinking of the individuals who are in need of those housing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, and for the 7,000 hours of work that your office did to complete the audit. Yeah, we do take these audits very seriously, and committee is definitely, as I said at the beginning, mindful of audit recommendations being made time and time again. But we do note that these are very robust responses from the corporation to address these concerns, and we are very pleased with that, and look forward to evaluating your progress in the coming months, and seeing how far we have made it. And of course, when the deadline hits, I'm sure you will publicly speak about that, but you'll be back before us as well, so we can see all the good work you've done. But yeah, when there are, troubling audits, seeing a effective and measurable, time-bound response and costed response is always what we want to see. So kudos to you for that, and we look forward to seeing an improvement to the performance of these programs in the near future. With that concludes the public portion of this meeting. Thank you to everyone who joined us online and stuck around. I'll ask committee members and the Auditor General staff to hang out for the in-camera portion of the meeting. Thank you.